11, Mind and Body, Part 3. So we're looking at Rembrandt, and he dies not long after this. This is sort of one of his last portraits. But he recorded his face, like I said, over time, and his youth faded away. And then later, now, he's looking more sorrowful, knowledgeable perhaps, and gentler before his death. And then he's got, of course, a light source here, and there's just softness all around him. So there's less intensity, more about softness. So Frida Kahlo is a really interesting artist in so many ways. She does mostly self-portraits. I think we all know. We've seen quite a number of her works. From everything from book bags to posters to there's even been movies been made about her. Salma Hayek did a film about her some years ago, portraying her. But her face, her idea is the body and self. That really is about what her work is about. Now, her eyes usually have this sort of flattish sort of stare at the viewer. She's not exactly confronting us, but she's trying to be dispassionate here, if that makes sense. The symbols around her are her personal history and Mexican history. Okay. This is her alter ego, the little monkey. Now, it's really interesting because the surrealists loved her, from the ones that were influenced by Freud in the 1930s, particularly. And they really loved her work because they thought she was a surrealist. But what she is a little bit different. She does magic realism, and magic realism is something that's known more with writing, with novels, and Gabriel Garcia Marquez and a few others. But magic realism is a little different than surrealism. Surrealism has to do with deep psychological dreams that have symbols in them, and then we show them in reality, or we try to depict an actual dream. Magic realism believes that the things that the symbols or the creatures or our spirit animals are right there with us, and that we can kind of sort of see them, sort of like believing in that your ghosts or your ancestors or some other symbols of your culture would be around you at all times, and that you can actually see them. And there are a few precedents to this. In her culture, she's from Mexico. That is one area. And Irish culture is very similar in that way, believing that these things are around you all the time. The Chinese believe your ancestors are with you. So she portrays magic realism. So it's slightly different. I know it seems it's the same time as the surrealists, and that's why she gained some popularity in the West, in Europe, because they connected with her in that way, and they visited her in Mexico. Okay, so her inner and outer being is expressed here. So she's somebody who shows, not in this one, but she shows what her interior of her body, what's going on in there, her surgeries and all that stuff. But in this particular one, she's showing her braided hair, that is going to connect her with peasant culture. Now, at the time that she painted this in 1938, we had seen the idea of dressing in native costume, actually throughout the world, but she's in Mexico. That goes away, and everybody starts wearing, you want to say, New York or Paris fashion. And she pushed back against this. She did that for a while, and then she realized, I want to embrace what my culture is, and I want to show that in my dress. So she wore more peasant clothing, and she wore her hair and dressed in a style that was more true to her culture, and she painted herself in that way as well. So that's showing some connection there. There's Mexican foliage, this sort of tropical foliage behind her, and then her monkey is her alter ego. Cindy Sherman is a very different example. Uh, all of her work are photographs, and what she poses in different ways and it's about fragmentation or about stereotypes, and it's about media disseminated imagery. So this particular one is called Untitled Film Still Number 53, Blonde Close Up with Lamp. So this is a fake film still, and she does a bunch of these. Sometimes she's Marilyn Monroe. She does a bunch of different things like that. But her face is kind of blank most of the time, and she's sort of messing with you, to put it in one way. She's trying to question what you think about images that you see in film and in advertising. And I guess, I haven't heard her thoughts on the internet. I'm sure she has some. But the idea of our identity and what we look like, and popular culture, how it's pushing forward this notion of perfection and this notion of, in this particular case, what a blonde woman looks like and acts like. Sweetheart Next Door, The Housewife, The Girl Left Behind, or The Vulnerable Hitchhiker. Those are some of her roles that she's reenacted, and how we play into those stereotypes, how we react to the things that we see in the news and in film. Totally different person yet again. Mariko Mori creates photographs and performances starring herself. So there's a lot of this artwork where the subject is oneself, but it's also more than that, if that makes sense. That's the vehicle, the body yourself, or the depiction of your self-portrait is a vehicle for commenting on other things. So she's commenting on fashion and on, who we think we are, and she was a model, and she translated this image Star Doll from the idea that how you would make yourself in a computer manipulated, or in a computer manipulated floating, there would be bubbles around her. Like, how would you idealize yourself? She questions that. So what is the self? When we start to change multiple things about ourselves, or dress up even, or makeup, or anything. So what is the self?